Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and I have a great couple on that I met out at Contact in the Desert. We hit it off, a lot of fun. Sam and Kelly, they're coming right up, or Kelly and Sam, I should say. Just a couple of things here. We have a blog, as usual. This one is called a 1978 Russia contactee case. And just for those of you who are interested in reading about historical cases, we have maybe well over 100 or 200 nice historic blogs on Podcast UFO. They're new every single week. Charles Lear is a dedicated blogger for this site, and he's also an author. But so do check out Podcast UFO when you can. So just a couple of things. Where am I? Here am I? I think I am. All right, I'm back. So I've been getting all kinds of texts and emails from people in New England, where I'm from right now. I'm down in South Carolina, but this is about this right here, and everyone's saying it's all over Facebook too. They're all seeing this, and what it is, I knew right away that it had to be. I thought it was a failed rocket launch, but it's not. It's the SpaceX Falcon 9 that launched out of Florida. Even though this is up in Maine, it was probably the course it was taken, where you can just see it from a very long distance. So they're seeing it in New York, down in Massachusetts, and all over. So no panicking. It's not a UFO. It's a launch, is what that is right there. So thank you everyone that supports the show. This week, later on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Sam Chong coming up. He's going to be talking about kind of stuff that I consider a little bit out there, and I'll just be questioning about that, and I let the listeners make up their mind with what they want to actually look into or believe in or whatever. So I think I'm going to bring our guests in now. Welcome. Where are you?
Hi there.
Saying, okay, hang on. I think it's here we go. Great to see you guys.
Hey, Martin. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I just had so much fun with you two. I just felt like I didn't really need to hang out with anyone else when I was out. When I first met you two, you're just so much fun. And you are also a podcaster. And I had mentioned on this show that I ran into someone, they said, who isn't a podcaster here? And that was you, Sam. You said that.
Well, that's, the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah. But I mean, we met so many, I couldn't believe, I have to say, when I first started this podcast in 2011, I knew of just a handful, and a lot of them have fallen away. The people that I did know, there was Mysterious Universe, there was Alejandro with Open Minds. He did that podcast, and there was a couple of others, and that was it. And now someone said there's 500 podcasts on UFOs. I don't know if that's true.
Oh,
or
I
not.
bet.
It's shocking, and it's good to see shifting into a new media. Well, not new at this point, but it's good to see the whole phenomenon evolving along with the rest of us, I guess.
Yeah. As long I'm sort of a nuts and bolts type guy. Like I like to stay along with a lot of the more factual things if possible, and so, but again, like I just mentioned in my monologue or whatever you want to call it, that I also let people make up their own minds, but when it gets a little carried away, I try to reel some people in. That's about all I do.
Get that fishing pole ready, Martin, because we've got some stuff.
Well, maybe. It's funny you say that, Martin. That's exactly the way Sam is. I think it's probably one of the reasons you guys hit it off so well. Sam and I are a little bit of a Mulder and Scully reversed, maybe. I'm always trying to drag him a little further into the weird stuff. He's made strides over the last years, but we've been doing this like 11 years, so nowhere near as long as you. But it's so fascinating to talk to somebody who really was at the tip of the spear when all of this started in the podcast space.
Now, were we on Dark Matter Radio Network at the same time?
I think
we must have been. It would have been 2016, 17.
Yeah, I was there when Art Bell came back.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
for his last return. Yeah.
And I was I was there first when he started that network. And unfortunately, it's no longer. From I know Keith is gone. I don't know, what
Yeah.
to that. It,
Yeah.
I believe it's
I
out
think
there anymore.
probably partially because, like you said, there's so much out there and there's so many people doing this. For a long time, art was kind of the only voice in the space. And then slowly more voices grew into it. And without art there anymore, it's pretty hard to hold the ground, I would imagine.
Right. Yeah. So, Kelly, your interest started because your dad was an artist. Mine was too, but not
Yeah.
not as a profession. But I mean, I used to sit there and just watch him paint at night, and
Yep.
he would paint late at night. Like I'm a painter too, and once you start painting, you just time goes away, and But I wasn't listening to Art Bell, my father neither. But
Yeah.
that's really what gave you the bug to really look into this, right?
It was, yeah. So I was the oldest kid, and so he would do he and my mother, every basketball game and baseball game and all the kid stuff, and then he would stay up all night and paint. And so whenever I couldn't sleep, I'd tiptoe into his studio, and sometimes we'd watch old movies, and sometimes we'd listen to the radio. And one night we just turned on the radio, and there was this AM show talking about. It was actually a night that Richard Hoagland was on. Was
Oh
the
yeah.
first I heard, and I was like 9 years old maybe. And ever since then, it's kind of been, I don't know, like the most intriguing background in my life. I've never quite let go of it. And then had to find somebody to marry who was at least willing to talk about it a lot and not get too annoyed with me. And now I feel like I've kind of drug him down the rabbit hole with me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he seems like he's semi-willing. Yeah.
Oh, for me, we, when we met at Contact in May or whatever, that conference was really kind of a turning point for me, just in terms of the variety of people and the people who you wouldn't expect. Like, I don't know what I was thinking was going to happen there. And there was probably a lot of what I was thinking there, like in particular, like, and like, Godspeed to anyone if this is your thing. But there was lots of like various kinds of healing being offered in the exhibitors. So that kind of stuff is, I enjoy that it's out there. But the people, and we've talked about this and have been talking about it, just the people were incredible. And it's people from all walks of life that are there to see, people who really have something to offer. And there's some stuff to take and some to leave from the guests. But the best part is meeting other enthusiasts and just normal people, and nobody you don't know. I mean, well, as a podcaster, you're obligated to introduce yourself as a podcaster to everyone you meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But other than that, like, I met these amazing people who have these phenomenal lives and careers, and no one brings it up. Everyone wants to hear what you're doing and what your interest is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, let's talk about Fright Day. What exactly do you
Yeah.
do? And you've been at it a long time. So what exactly is that?
So it's a podcast, and we have an offshoot of it called Visitors, which is really interview heavy with people kind of in the UAP space. But we alternate. We review horror movies and talk to the people involved in making those, and then we discuss topics of high strangeness. So anything from JFK assassination to Roswell to and that's what brought us to Contact in the Desert to begin with. But we've been doing that for
since 2013.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah. Since 2013. And now Sam has kind of ducked in and out. Everybody's always asking us for him to be on more, but he is actually much better at parenting than I am. So he prioritizes the kids much better. And I'm always ducking out to make it to a podcast recording, and he does when he can. So.
Okay. Now you saw the graphic here that was made. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I love it. That's actually the first time I saw it on a screen that wasn't my phone. So the details really pop there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you talk about all that type of stuff, but so I love the fact that you do, movies. It doesn't matter if they're old or newer, but I mean, you do a lot of the newer movies, and are you ever critical of them if you don't think they're good? I mean, do you like go right at it, or? Yeah.
So critical. Like, it's one of my, why don't you talk about your take on it first? Like,
No, you go ahead.
sometimes I'm a little dictated by emotion, and if we see a movie that just is not to my liking,
Were you going to say sucked? Is that what you were?
Well,
Yeah, I thought I heard the S.
Yeah, it depends on what your tastes are, and so I'm not the arbiter of taste, but for me it might have been something that didn't hit like they were intending it to, and I have worked on dialing it back, because in the end of the day, somebody cared a lot and put probably a huge portion of their life on hold or into that movie, and it's art, and
Yes.
it may just not be art for me. So I tend to really lace into things that weren't for me, but it's more of a knee jerk, and frequently afterward I'm like, gosh, like if I was sitting there talking to the guy in a bar, like I probably wouldn't have said that about his movie. So it's something I'm working on. It's not something I'm proud of, but we definitely let go with both barrels frequently.
And I think I'm just more easily entertained, so I genuinely like most of them. Once in a while I'll run into one I think is awful, but for the most part, I guess my taste isn't quite as discerning, but it has led us to a lot of these topics just because there is a lot of overlap, and this whole idea of people researching in this field because they're intrigued or they're okay with things that are unknown or even a little bit frightening. So there's a lot of overlap in terms of audiences, I think, that are interested in the two things. And that's really fun to watch that grow. We've got a really beautiful community of people, and it's a lot of them keep me honest as the molder of the group. We've got lots of very scientifically minded people. So when I present something, I'm always getting lots of emails. Well, Kelly, did you think about this? And what about Sam is kind of top of that pile. So I think I always joke, and maybe all the years of doing this, I've convinced him of the JFK assassination conspiracy and that Roswell was something other than what the government says it was. Those are the two things that I think I've sold him on 100%. Everything else, I'm not sure I've sold him on. But
yeah. Well,
it's interesting though, starting with horror movies, and I think I told you this story. This is when we first met. I had mentioned we were talking about our podcast. You were talking about podcast UFO, and I was telling you a little bit about Frightday. And when we first got together as just three friends watching movies, like we didn't know it was going to be a podcast. That first night, we watched Dean Aliotto's UFO abduction. Which this was kind of before this. So this was, in 2013. So I was full on into horror movies, and the UFO thing was just kind of like a icing on the cake. I always been interested in it, but I had so much fun watching that film, and we talked about it. It's kind of horror, I think, for me, maybe globally, like for other people too, but it's the same idea that there has to be something out of the corner of your eye. There's got to be something there. Like, I just can't believe that the world is as mundane and generally crappy as it can seem sometimes. And people need that. So we have found in the time that the podcast has been running, and the people that we've met at conferences and in film fests and stuff like that, there's a huge overlap between people who are interested in UFO phenomenon and people who just like to be scared, like with horror movies. So it's kind of always, you can reliably count on there to be someone in the group that you're going to have a lot of common ground with.
Right. Now we have the Age of Disclosures coming out on the 21st.
Very exciting.
A lot of people are talking about that right now. And I was invited up to the premiere in New York. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do it or not, but that would be a lot of fun. Hope to have Dan Herrera on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
He was on Bill Maher's show last week, which was really great. Yeah, that was a lot of exposure there. I want to say hi to everyone in chat. Thank you all for being here, as you are every week. We have Valiant Loki, Duckhead. He's in here all the time. Christopher Alexander is always in here. Dirk Bon Steele. I always have a hard time with that. But anyway, I see a couple of new people. Thank you all. Thank you all for being in here. Duckhead is always in here. I think I just mentioned that in the beginning. Anyway, thank you all for being here, as always. And Wyatt. But anyway, so when you do this, do you also run clips too? Clips of the movies and things like that?
Yeah, so that's Byron, our the third person involved. So when Sam's not on the show, Byron and I are on it consistently. Sam ducks in when he can, but Byron's the producer, and he does while we're recording. He does the soundboard and the clips and everything else. He's kind of a magician. I'm not really sure, and he tries to keep me on track, which is also a huge feat. But so yeah, we'll play clips of the movies or trailers, talk about pieces. We always be careful about spoilers and want to make sure we don't ruin movies for people. But
Oh yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's important. Now, when you talked about Dean Aliotta, were you talking about his found footage type of film? Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah, the
Yeah,
McPherson.
I mean, the story of that is just hilarious.
Well, it's such a great micro example of what can happen in this community too. I think where, like, he was not intending to trick people. It wasn't even like, Blair Witch Project where it was a campaign to try and make people think it was real. He wasn't even doing that, but people were so excited to believe something that they grabbed a hold and just ran with it. And he had to go to great lengths to like get people to understand, no, this isn't real.
debunking his own film. And
Yeah.
and then that I love the one where he's attacked. My mother knows those people, like
I mean, it's like, actually,
they know the McPhersons, for God's sake,
It's his nephew or like, and he's like,
but it's such a good, I think, like, piece to look at as what we can all fall into if we get a little bit too enthusiastic and run away with some of these topics. I'm so excited to explore all of them. And I know you guys are pretty skeptical. I really try to go in with a pretty open mind, but before I start, making broad conclusions and proselytizing about things, there's a lot that we need to do. And I think that's just such a great example. You can really get carried away with things pretty easily.
Well, I think I don't know if I call myself skeptical, but
Skeptics never call themselves skeptics, Mark.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. It's in denial. Yeah, but still, I think there's so many really good things out there and solid things and weird things that I think it's good when you can figure out what something is. That's my, like it has a prosaic,
Yeah, totally.
but I mean, I'd rather get through that and then look at the really good cases because there's a lot of them, many, and and I still, I'm still having arguments with people about what the Tic Tac was and things like that,
Well, yeah.
but
I mean,
because I think I personally don't think it's one of ours, and that's where I have all these people saying, "Oh, yes, it was," and blah blah blah, but I still don't feel as though it was myself.
I agree. Those are some of I like the historical cases, and we briefly talked about this before, and I know you've mentioned it as well, like the historical stuff that was before AI and it was released before AI.
Yeah.
But the any of the naval aviators that saw things, to me, it's not as relevant whether the gimbal was like optical flares, on a rotating camera, or I believe, I mean, the U.S. government trusts these people to fly multi-million-dollar machines at Mach speeds through the air, armed with enough weapons to kill hundreds of people. Those are people that I would trust their stories even without any of the. And for me, eyewitnesses can be, but if you're going to take a story to the bank, Alex Dietrich, to me, and Dave Fravor and Ryan Graves are pretty unimpeachable.
I think so too, and I've had the argument with years ago with Seth Shostak from SETI, and he said, none of those people are any better witness than anyone else, and I totally disagree with that, because you're not going to have some fool with a $100 million jet, flying that, and and they know what to observe. That's what they're trained to do, and then when the thing didn't have a transponder and blah blah blah, and the lock-on situation, all that, it was just a bunch of weird stuff. And
the corresponding data from the ship.
Yes.
I mean, there was there was something. I think there was something there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's just one of the cases. There's so many more that are good. But Kelly, just before we went on, you mentioned, oh, we should talk about the Magenta
Yeah.
UFO crash. And
Yeah.
I might be on the other side on that
Which
one.
is, I don't know that I'm on a side, just to be clear. I think one of the things Sam brought up, and in my other life, I do academic related stuff, and I'm just a real geek for research. And so anytime there's something that you can really dig into with a lot of research, it automatically grabs my interest. And Magenta, I think, is one of those stories. For those, I'm sure most of your listeners know, but when David Grush was interviewed a few years ago, one of the big bombshells he dropped was discussing that supposedly the first big crash was not Roswell, but rather was a crash in Italy in 1933. And immediately it was tied to stories about World War II and the Vatican and Nazis. And all of that was so fascinating as a potential for research that was really where I got intrigued. And then we had a weird thing happen to us on our podcast. We got a few anonymous voice messages, which very well could be somebody, doing role playing, some fun game. They were really detailed, and they included a lot of details that kind of overlapped with Magenta, a bunch of stuff about Operation Paperclip and some of the scientists involved in that, and some details that weren't quite as broadly known as, like von Braun and such. So that sent me on a rabbit hole, and eventually it kind of converged with the Magenta story. And there was just a big conference over in Italy near the site of the supposed crash. The Soul Foundation had their big conference for the year over there. We really wanted to go, but getting from Montana to Italy and getting childcare was just a bridge too far. But from the people who were there, it sounds like it was pretty incredible. So Martin, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. I would say there are two guys who have done some really incredible research into primary sources, which again, because I'm a geek, this is where my brain goes. But Craig Oliver and Michael Armentor. And in fact, Craig mentioned to me, you were like his gateway into this whole topic. You were the first podcaster that he listened to regularly when he started getting interested in this, 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, great.
So yeah, I mean, just one other person who maybe may not have gotten involved if it weren't for what you're doing. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I have to say I have not done research into that crash, but I'll tell you why. That after David Grush announced that, I spoke with Kevin Randall. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's a really good researcher. And he said that was debunked years ago. And then, and he brings up, how it was all debunked. So I guess I would have to say that I'm on the fence about that. And I'd like to, there's been a number of things over the years that I have thought was either one way or the other. And then I'm sort of semi-convinced, maybe to change my thoughts on it. And I'm open-minded to change my thoughts on it.
So we'll have to see stuff. We will have to. I mean, there's some really cool documents to look at, Martin. There were some pieces of paper that actually have been dated to the right time frame, and that some tests have been run on. And there are more.
And that was Pinotti's research.
Yeah, so an Italian researcher who received some documents that actually came through the son-in-law of Mussolini. And there are actual telegrams that show Mussolini, writing about this. I think that the degree to which things can be faked certainly is pretty extreme. There are a couple pieces of that, at least, that I think are almost to the point of unimpeachability. Perhaps not the whole story, but at least with those core components. And I think what's really interesting, perhaps even more than the Magenta crash itself, is how it dovetails with so much of our own history and Project Paperclip and the Nazi scientists that came over that were almost certainly, if this was a crash, that were certainly studying these crash materials. And perhaps this is where we got a lot of our rocket science literally from that put us on the moon. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to send you some material. You should talk to Craig or Michael at some point, because they are just such a wealth of knowledge in the actual research of it. And they are, they've had people on the ground, even in Italy recently, that have gone to some of these places. And it feels, at least, a lot of people say, I'm not going to say that this is 100% true, but it seems very well worth investigation at this point.
Right.
So I'm
Now,
not sure
some
what
people,
Rachel was talking about, but I'd be surprised about any concrete debunking of all of it.
all right. Well, I'm just reading through Kevin's blog right now on that, but I'm not going to, take the time, of course, to read it on the air. But I know that, one of the thoughts were that David Grush was fed misinformation
Which
purposely.
is totally possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And, because that would make his, his credibility fall apart. And unfortunately that they tried to do that later, with that
Right.
article that came out.
That's the peril of having whistleblowers who are at least quasi approved by official channels.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because we always have to look for that, right? I feel like at every turn, there's a place where you could be getting a bit of really great information alongside something that's totally made up. And I don't know how we ever overcome that beyond just crazy levels of research. So,
Yeah. I think it feels in some ways with, the, the hearings in DC and things like that, it feels almost like a tipping point, and then it feels like it pulls back, and I've been watching this for a while, and it feels like we're moving ahead, and then, and a lot of people will listen to my show and I'll read comments, which is fine, whatever they want to leave for their opinions. But a lot of times they'll say like, well, nothing new here. I'm not hearing anything new. And it's right. But I personally, you're talking about earlier historic cases. I love historical cases. And, I had Dr. Scott, Arina Scott on last week. And, that's an old 1973 Pascagoula case, but new witnesses still come forward. So there's still, when a topic is brought up, there's still, hope that, you can solve it. But when enough time goes by, like Roswell, all those people, there's no witnesses alive at this point. And at one time, they had interviewed 600 people that were witnesses or first or secondhand witnesses to that. So,
and that was Schmidt and Randall talked to the majority of those people, didn't they?
yes. Yep. And Bill Moore in the early days, but yeah. And Stanton Friedman, some, but you're right, mostly Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall, and then Tom Carey after that.
And I think for me, Roswell, everybody who knows, who cares at all about the UFO phenomenon, has a soft spot for Roswell, I think. And it's the one everybody knows about, obviously. But to me, there's just something about knowing that we will probably never know. Like that's the case where I think every stone has been turned, and there's no more avenues to exhaust at this point. And so for me, it will always be, a little capsule in my imagination of what could have been. And I find it really compelling. I also, when we were there last year, we didn't make it out to the skip site, but I did see now that the Corona skip site is it's either the state or the federal government has put in an actual parking area with a slightly maintained trail that navigates the private land to the skip site, and so it's got a page on the Park Service page now. So I don't know. I mean, obviously it's got legs.
Yeah. That is really, like you said, and I think one of the craziest things about that is the fact that it went away immediately and nobody talked about it. Now, there was something I was trying to uncover, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, where someone said that they were talking about it in the 1960s. I said, what do you mean the 1960s? Nobody was talking about it in the 1960s. And I never could get anywhere, because that would be really, if there were records of anything like that, then, it would just be really interesting. Nothing more than that. Nothing won't prove anything, but still, it was
Absolutely. And those any of those more contemporary stories would just be like gold to me. And like you say, not because it proves or changes anything for me or for anybody really, but we all laugh at the time compression narrative because it's ridiculous on its face. But when people are telling stories, or whether it's a deathbed confession, I mean, it's, I'm not as young as I used to be, and I don't remember things as clearly as I once did. So you've lost some of the detail and the color. But if you had some of those, if there was something from the 60s where someone came forward, but everyone that was involved in that was terrified, I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, when you can argue with the skeptics, there's a couple of things that I always bring up, like, in the first place, why would the Army Air Force put the article in the newspaper that they captured a flying disc, first of all? And, skeptics have argued, oh, yeah, that was to hide the mogul. Well, the mogul wasn't made of anything except for the sensors, anything in particular special. So, I mean, why would they fly it to another air base, and, on and on and on? There's just so many things that really don't make any sense. And Stanton Friedman, who I just mentioned, claims that the U.S. government lied 6 times when it comes to Roswell. And I forget exactly what they were. One of them was the 1990s hearing when it came up, and they said it was just crash dummies,
Right.
which weren't even produced until 1950, I believe, or something, 52 or whatever it was. So anyway, we'll never know. The time goes away, and the story will evolve. It has, and we'll see what it would be like. It'd be interesting to know what it would be like in, say 50 years from now, the whole story of Roswell.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I would like to go there one day I just wouldn't want to be in that area, but in July, but I mean, it still would be a lot of fun, I would think.
Well, when we were there, Kelly interviewed a gentleman from the museum.
Oh yeah.
I can't.
Oh,
the name escapes me.
Yep,
but they were, if I remember correctly, they were trying to kind of muster things to mount another field expedition to the crash site. And one thing that I realized, and Martin, you're a antiquarian and historian. So when the Custer Battlefield Monument burned, they were able to find all sorts of things that they'd never had an opportunity to find before. And now we have LiDAR, which is an amazing tool for seeing the exact kind of things that I think we would have been difficult to cover up, or they wouldn't have known to cover up in the initial combing of the area.
Yeah.
So I've seen some fantastic LiDAR scans of just archaeological sites.
Right.
I think to me that would be an expensive but so worthwhile endeavor for the skip site or the crack, like any of those areas. I think would be interesting to see what happened, even if all you found was buttons from the uniforms of the poor guys that had to crawl around on their hands and knees and
that's another thing right there. Why would they crawl around on their hands and knees if it was just normal material? And get every little tiny bit of it up? I mean, it just seems like it had to be something a lot more than. And there's
that came right afterwards with our government. I mean, that the Air Force was formed literally months after that.
That's right. Yeah.
Hard not to connect the two. And so many changes that happened just with how information was structured in our government immediately after. Again, the research I think is so fun to get into because, with more time as a perspective, you can start connecting dots like that, or at least drawing correlations, even if you can't call it a causal relationship, and it becomes really interesting.
Yes, I just have to say thank you, Duckhead, for the donation. That was very nice of you. So, do I have totally unrelated? Do you have any Star Wars toys? No, but I just talked. Isn't that weird, Sam? I was just telling you about the Star Wars toys that famous director had that I know. Anyway, that's so weird. But no, I don't have any. But yeah, those are. It's a funny thing. Here I am, an antique appraiser, whatever. And then there was a Star Wars toy that's worth $600. I mean, I can't even understand this type of thing. And
You know what's interesting though, Martin, you had mentioned, and Sam said, we're probably not going to see anything more with regard to Roswell. My brain always goes to the only place we're going to is at some estate sale somewhere, right? Like there's going to be some information, somebody's great grandfather or grandfather is going to pass away, and there's going to be something in some box. And I mean, that enter in when you're doing any of your work, I can imagine, combing every last corner.
Yeah, it was funny. I was at a friend of mine's auction hall, and he said he knows that I'm into the UFO topic, and he had an estate of a FBI agent that lived in Japan for 30 years, and he says there's a footlocker here. I got to have you look at these papers in the footlocker, and they're Majestic 12 papers. And so I said, oh my God, this is really something. I got on the phone to Stanton Friedman, and talked to him about it. And so it just is probably they had a passing interest in the whole topic in UFOs, probably nothing more than that, most likely. But they weren't anything original. They were just photocopies like, that's out there. But it was still pretty interesting that they were there.
Well, interesting the fact that an FBI agent would have copies of them. I mean, that lends a little bit more credence to it than, a person like me being interested in it, I suppose.
Well, I don't think so. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I was at the MUFON event a couple of years ago, and I had met a FBI retired and a CIA agent retired. They're both really into the topic. And the FBI, I'm trying to think of which, who has it's like an intranet. They have their own information. And they said when that launched, the number one search from all their agents all over the country was UFO related. Number one search.
Really?
So there is an interest. Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. That would be my first search, because that's what I would want to know. But also, I think if I had dedicated my life to that agency, that'd be a really good barometer to tell what type of things were being hidden from you. That'd be a really kind of innocuous, like, I'm curious about UFOs. Like, oh, they're lying about UFOs. Like, they're probably lying about JFK too.
Yeah.
They are JFK for sure.
So I mentioned earlier about your graphic, and so and then right in the title here we have cryptids and conspiracies. So what about the cryptids? I mean, this is a UFO show, but what do you think? Do you think there's really something there?
Boy, well, so
we're all looking at you, Kelly.
Yeah. I am hopelessly curious. I don't think I'm going to hang my hat on anything and say, yes, I am 100% certain. I do think just over the years of what I've researched, some things have been wildly fun, like the Loveland Frog Man or Goat Man, things like that. But then there are areas where, I'll read Hunt for the Skinwalker, those books, and you hear people that are very credentialed talking about insanely weird things that they have seen. Yes. So, I like to leave my brain open to the possibility of things that I just don't yet understand. I will say the most credible research I've ever seen on any cryptid was from actually a gentleman who passed away this fall. His name was Jeff Meldrum. And he
yes, real nice man. Yes.
So nice and so bright. I actually we were speaking about synchronicities a little while ago.
This is, I have to preface this. If I hadn't have been there, I would not have believed my wife telling me this story.
So this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I was doing a bunch of research for a multi-part series we did on Bigfoot. And in that series, we were talking about a lot of different research, and he's the most respected researcher. He was a tenured professor at University of Idaho, and he did a lot of study about evolutionary gait. So how mankind's gait has evolved over the years, and tied that into a lot of research of, casts of footprints. So at the same time, there had been a series on one of the NPR podcasts where they were interviewing Jeff Meldrum for a few episodes. So we were on a little road trip and listening to that podcast. We had our little girls in the back seat, and I was reading his book. And so we stopped at a gas station in this little teeny tiny town in Montana. Sam jumps out to go inside to grab a bite to eat after we fill up on gas. And I'm reading this book and we're listening to the podcast with Jeff Meldrum speaking. And this man walks in front of our car. I looked at him. My daughters, who were like 3 and 1, had no idea what I was talking about. But I said, I think that's the guy we're listening to. And Sam came out from the gas station and I told him, he's, Kelly, you're crazy. Of course, that's not him. There's no way. So I got out and wandered around the parking lot. And sure enough, there was a truck there with University of Idaho license plates. And I waited and he came out of the gas station. And like a total weirdo, I went up to him and asked him for his autograph and had my book and told him I was doing all my research. He was incredibly gracious. And
well, what are the odds of that, huh?
I know. And then I got to do a great interview with him. I called him a couple weeks later and we did like a 2-hour interview. It was maybe my favorite interview I've ever done. But
wow.
Yeah, so synchronicity. I don't know. Statistically, the odds against something like that seem so astronomical. You have to believe there's something going on, right?
That's crazy. I mean, yeah. I mean, that is nuts. So did you tell him you must have told him you were listening to him?
Yeah, I said, I'm listening to
same time.
I'm reading your book. Will you sign the book for me? And yeah, it was all, he laughed at, I think he'd probably heard enough synchronicities in his life that he was impressed, but not as like astounded as I was. But yeah, he sat and did a beautiful interview and he was just a great man in the field. I don't know how the cryptozoology field is going to replace that kind of legitimacy, but
it was interesting. There were a lot of similarities. We were at a Bigfoot conference, I don't know, in 2016 maybe, and he was one of the presenters. It's a different crowd. Like the Bigfoot Fest conference was a different crowd than like a UFO conference.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because he was very just very to the point, very academic. Like he was very professorial, and he had his evidence, and he wasn't making claims. He was just presenting his research, what he had learned, what his conclusions were. But he was not making wild claims. And then you have simultaneously the people who, and again, I don't know. I certainly don't have any answers. But the people who think that Bigfoot came in a UFO, but passed through some intermediate dimensions on the way there and is composed of plasma, things like that. So it was funny to watch Meldrum because he was in the back for part of it, and just he was being very, you could tell he was being very diplomatic, but he was just
yeah. Well, I think it's the thing, I've always been on the fence about Bigfoot, but I mean, you're talking about the gate. I mean, that when you look at the analysis of that really, are you talking about the Patterson, whatever it is?
Footage,
footage. That's pretty convincing. And the other thing is, a couple of things is people always seem to say the same thing. I smelled a skunk-like odor, and I had this, the shrill or whatever it is. And there's a lot of things that are similar. And I had some people that are convinced that they have them visiting at their place up in Oregon. And so I said, well, where are the pictures? And they said, no, we have an agreement. And I'm like, oh God. And then I've heard other people say the same thing. So I don't even know what to think about it.
I do hear that. It's very strange, but we have another friend who, Seth Breedlove, he makes wonderful documentaries about a lot of these cryptids.
Oh yeah. Yep. I know. He is. Yeah.
And he was honestly, Martin, more skeptical than you or Sam for years. And then a handful of years ago, when he was out filming, he saw one. And I love talking to him about it because it was this huge switch that was flipped for him. Because before that point, he was very respectful of people, but did not subscribe to any kind of belief in it. And now he finds himself on the other side of the fence. So I think for all of it, for me at least, it's a matter of, is it warranting further investigation, not whether it's true or not. And a lot of them, I think, do warrant further investigation. It's just interesting to look into.
Yes, I had Seth on my show back. He was episode number 392. I just looked it up. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Love Seth.
We love Seth. I talked to him a couple weeks ago. He's a great guy.
Have you seen his new one about Thomas Mantell?
Oh, is that the guy that fell out the window?
Nope.
No.
Oh no, Thomas Mantell, the crash, the
Yeah, the
airplane crash
B-51
when,
pilot.
he tried to shoot down the UFO. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know who
Seth
that is. Yeah.
has a new. It's called Lost Contact, and it's pretty
Oh, I
recent.
got to get back in touch with him. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
in the last,
great.
and it's a really fun. Like we talk about like the historical, encounters or sighting, and this it's a really interesting story, but also it's just, I think, human in a way that a lot of those stories get lost, or they lose something of, the impact that it had on the people who were there. And you hear about, my life was never the same after this, and understandably, like, I don't know how it could be, but they did a really cool job of interviewing Mantell's descendants and just talking about like the generational loss and what it meant for them growing up. Just kind of everything happened because he was chasing an orb in his P-51, and so there were real consequences to that. And it was a neat. There wasn't a lot of speculation in this documentary. It was just kind of just the facts, and I just thought it was a really neat look at a very small microcosm of this phenomena. So I thought it was really touching, and it's sad, and
It is sad.
we'll never know. Well, again, we'll never know what happened. But
I remember the skeptics were saying that he was chasing Venus and that he lost oxygen. He was up too high. I don't know what his elevation was, but
they don't. Yeah, those planes weren't pressurized, so they had a pretty low service ceiling. But also, he was a war hero. I mean, he survived World War II as a fighter pilot. I would assume that he would have seen what 50 caliber machine gun is going to do to someone when you pull the trigger, and he wasn't willy-nilly opening fire over American soil with it. Yeah. So, but again, it's a very human story.
Yeah, that's great. So as far as have we touched on everything? We didn't touch on conspiracies. We did a little bit on the JFK papers.
Yeah.
That's is there what other types of conspiracies have you looked into on your podcast?
Oh boy. I mean, also RFK.
In a big way. Kelly did 6 episodes.
Which one?
On RFK.
On RFK's assassination.
Oh, RFK. Okay.
Yeah, which that's one of those where I feel like the older I get, the more I'm trying to challenge my assumptions on things. That seems like such an open and shut case that I almost didn't want to dig into it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the further I looked, the more. Actually, maybe Sam, did I win you over on that one too? Maybe I won you over on RFK.
I think I'm more likely to. I mean, there was something hinky with RFK.
So
Robert
weird.
Kennedy's
It just seems so open and shut, but boy. Yeah, I really do think that those are the ones that have most legs for me. Sam is not being forced. I wish I could force Sam. Somebody, a listener just asked if you were being forced to
blink twice. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Yeah.
Just an example, again, like antiques. Kelly doesn't brag. People absolutely adore Kelly for obvious reasons on our show. And this really fantastic listener got in touch with her after she did her series on RFK assassination and said, "Yeah, I have this little thing I'd like to send to you." So gave her a mailing address, and
he had been in LA when RFK was assassinated and kind of did a full vigil outside the hospital. He was in his teens, early 20s, and was really moved by the whole situation.
Yeah, and so he sent Kelly a framed original campaign poster from that campaign, and he was just an older gentleman. He was in his 80s, and he just didn't need it. He just wanted Kelly to have it because she'd put in the time to cover something that he really, really cared about. So our listeners are, I mean, your listeners are probably the best, but like ours are a close second.
Except when you're on your show, you're going to say our listeners. Yeah, that's what you have to do. I'll come on your show and say that your listeners are the best. I'll do that for you. Yeah, but anyway, I mean that was such a sad day. I mean, RFK had such promise. I thought.
Yeah, I mean, not to go political, but I do feel like that was a huge turning point in our history. You think about what could have been.
Yeah.
You know,
And
pretty hard to
and
imagine.
wherever you fall politically, just the idea that violence to a political end was successfully used to change the course of a nation.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. If you believe in democracy and like basic freedoms, it was a blow. It was really a blow.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, I mean, that's really that. I'm glad you covered that. That is interesting. I'll check that out myself.
Maybe we'll convince you, Martin. Maybe we'll convince you there was a conspiracy afoot. I don't know, something weird.
Well,
MK
yeah.
Ultra. That's another one we've done a lot on. MK Ultra, and
I'm kind of on the fence about that one too, I think. So yeah, I have to look into that one.
well, that's a good one because there's a lot of actual documentation from the government. They
Oh, wait a
admit
minute. No, I'm thinking of something else. What was I thinking? Is that where they did the ESP and all that other type of stuff? That
Oh, that
Oh.
was
what am I
Project
thinking of?
Stargate and
Okay, yeah.
viewing and
yeah.
all that.
No, that was the MK Ultra was the umbrella project to mind control for
Oh,
lack
yeah,
of-
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Manchurian candidate idea, mind wiping.
Oh, yes, yes.
It
Yeah.
was a lot more insidious than that, and those are kind of just like the headlines. It was a lot grosser.
Yeah, really horrible.
The way they treated.
Well, yeah. I mean, when someone says that the government would never do those things,
Oh no, they would.
yeah, they did a
They
did
did.
a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah. The LSD experiments and all that.
exactly.
Exactly, and that's that's one reason that the things that we know that are the United States government has done in the name of furthering its own control and power. I've heard a lot of arguments against the existence of UFOs, UAPs, and cryptids, and all the other like high strangeness stuff. But to me, the government wouldn't do that, or if they did, they would tell us. Is not a convincing argument.
No, not at all. So, do you, either one of you, think that there's a possibility that these things are? I guess we got 5 minutes left. Do you think there's a possibility of that these things are linked, or some of them are linked in some
I
type of
do.
way?
I can't answer for Sam. The more research I do, the more I find just weird connections that seem to be threads weaving between everything. I also know that there's a degree of human nature that we look for that and we want that to be the case so that things make a little more sense. And I'm sure I could be falling victim to that, but there are a whole lot of connecting threads, it feels like.
And yeah, there was someone that I was friends with who passed away a few years ago, Paul Eno, and he did a show for many years on all types of things. But he was absolutely convinced that they were all connected and that they were all interdimensional. He just said this is, he was convinced. And he actually witnessed an amazing poltergeist situation where there were policemen there and firemen there, and a 200-pound refrigerator lifted up off the ground and went across the room. They all saw it. And these things were happening. And the reason the police were there and the firemen was there because they were constantly happening in this house, little tiny house in Connecticut. And as soon as the girl was out of there, they stopped. The thing stopped. So, I mean, it's a great case. But he witnessed that firsthand.
I feel like there's something going on with consciousness, and Sam hates it when I start talking about those things because that's
I don't hate it. I do not hate it.
But to me, I feel like there's got to be something there that, maybe is an idiot comparison would be, gravity seemed like magic to people 1,000 years ago. Maybe something along those lines where there really is a scientific reason connecting all of these things. We just haven't figured that out yet. I don't know if Sam's on that page, though.
All right, it's the blink twice thing again, Sam.
I already. She almost saw last time. Maybe a different signal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So where can someone, we just have a couple of minutes. So where can someone find your show?
Sam?
Our website is frightday.com. I think everything should be linked to from there. Our YouTube channel, just search Frightday, our YouTube channel. All of our earlier stuff was primarily is still available on all podcast apps. They recently, more recently transitioned to doing YouTube. So some of the older stuff is only available as audio. But yeah, search for Frightday on YouTube or frightday.com.
Okay, so I have a movie for you to review.
Ooh, what is it?
I just saw it. I just told Sam about it. Begonia.
I can't wait.
Yeah, you got to see that movie. It's really. I'm not going to say a single word about it, but I will tell people that are listening. It's quite a movie. I will just say that it's quite
Well,
a
the
movie.
premise from the trailer is a high-powered CEO woman gets kidnapped by a couple of guys who think she's an alien.
Yes, yeah.
And
So
beyond that, I don't know anything.
That's all you need to know. Yeah.
Martin and Donna said to watch it. I'm going to watch it.
Thank goodness. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Now he'll go with me.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. And I can't
so
wait
much.
to meet in person again. Perhaps it's a visit. But anyway.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of fun.
Give Donna a hug. It was lovely meeting her.
Okay, excellent. All right. Good night, y'all. Good night, y'all. I'm down south right now. So I say y'all. Yeah. Lovely. All right. Take care.
Martin, thank you so much.
You bet. Goodbye. All right. So everyone, we're going to be back on Thursday evening with Samuel Chung, and should be a very interesting show. Thanks so much, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes to the